Hello, everybody, and welcome back to This is the Year, the Swiss AI podcast, where we deconstruct all things around artificial intelligence. This is already our episode number 6, so we are truly keen to be deep diving also in our first comments that we've received in the last episode that almost reached 1,000 people, which we are truly honored, and we of course need to improve on each and every single episode. Today, I'm your host and moderator, Cyril, and I'm joined by two of the actual gentlemen co-hosting with me this particular podcast. Maybe the first one, I quickly try to do an improved introduction, as it was also requested by the audience. He is currently basically building Python code. He is building agents. He's using MCP and A2A, hopefully very soon into production in Switzerland and accessible to millions of Swiss individuals without them even knowing this is AI. Joao, how are you doing, my friend? Long time no see.
Long time no see, since a week ago, and we've been talking ever since to keep each other on the updates of AI. A bit of code, a bit of magic, a bit of experience and skills on AI, and that's all it takes to build wonderful, wonderful agents. But let's go into that in a few minutes. I'll let you introduce our other co-host. Who's he, Cyril?
Absolutely. AI magician, he's usually referred to. I think his name is actually Bene, and I think Bene, you're a bit more and well rested this week. Or how is it going, my friend?
It's good. This week we got some news about some AI fake things going on, and it's sad because they promised deep learning. What they deliver was deep lying. Anyhow, we're going to go deeper on this episode, but I'm well rested, and this is not paid advertise. It's Easter right now, and every year I've been having this tradition of ordering this massive sweet.
Is it Swiss chocolate, Ben? Or it's
No,
probably not Swiss chocolate.
It's Brazilian made. It's Brazilian made. It's Kinder Buenos flavor and Ferrero, and it's half a kilo. It's so much.
It's like 10% the quality of Swiss chocolate.
Also,
Great.
It's half a kilo, so I think it's the last episode Ben is doing. Next week he'll be at the hospital with severe case of diabetes, but that's fine. We'll keep doing AI. We'll get an AI agent to replace Bene. How hard can it be?
Exactly. So next week, we just have to replace
Let's talk about that.
Great, gentlemen, let's get started with the episode, and I would try to kick it off with a comment that we received from one of the listeners, and the question was like this: where is really the real money to be made in 2025 in AI as a beginner? It's a pretty difficult question, but I tried to unwrap it in like a multi-layered answer, basically, and guys, feel free to jump in, maybe on the higher levels. So the way I usually look at this, answering a question like that, is what is AI in the first place? And I think it's commonly of an understanding, or at least that's how I think about it, that AI value creation is made across different levels. So the first level, basically, just to note it already, is probably the ship has been sailed and the money is not there anymore to be made at the beginner. It's on the chips level. Level 1 means it's all the chips companies, NVIDIA, Micron, or maybe SK Hynix are building the infrastructure on the very foundation layer. So they're probably in 2025 as a beginner pretty much difficult to make several, let's say, hundreds of thousands of Swiss francs because it's simply too difficult. And then the second layer, or level 2, basically is the data center, and that's where the compute is happening. For most of the listeners, probably that's common knowledge. For the ones that is not, the AIs that we are basically building as agents, they're not running on our own, let's say, MacBooks. They're actually running in a cloud infrastructure. And of course, this field is heavily dominated by like the large players, AWS, Microsoft, maybe CoreWeave as well, or Google, and the ship also sailed. Guys, would you agree that level 1, level 2, probably the ship has sailed?
I think there are a lot of people building data centers, like trying to build data centers, but so far, for the past few decades, it's been a thing of more of a real estate business, right? You can get the area, get the building, and then have to populate it with a bunch of servers. And now with AI, more than ever, it's a power thing. So GPUs are incredibly power hungry, and not only have to have the right size and the right amount of power, but also have to cool it down somehow, so with massive amounts of water. So you can build data center, please try. It's always good to have competition on the market, but I'd say it's incredibly hard to get together all three elements that you need for this and get it at a cost and at a speed that you can possibly compete with the major players out there.
Yeah, it's probably not the most low-hanging fruit. So level 1, level 2, as a beginner, probably off the table. But we're increasing in terms of probability that there is a way to make money in AI. So the third level is the model companies. These are the typical ones that you hear in the news all the time: OpenAI, XAI, Anthropic. Google itself as well. So these are basically the companies that are building these multiple billion-dollar large language models. Again, fairly difficult even for a large company in Switzerland or in Europe to be leveraging this knowledge to make money, because it's a heavily dominated field by a few of the concentrated players. And in order to train the models, you need to compute. And that's the general difficulty nowadays to even get to the chips, let alone to get sufficient compute to be training these models. So again, maybe not the best way to be making money. And I know it's pretty much a long answer to a simple question, but we're getting there.
It's not only the chips and everything, it's also the talent for you to create those models and to innovate. It's harder and harder because the major players are pushing everyone.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, maybe on that, it's just a funny thing I've seen by Google. They're paying people not to work at the competition. Not only they're not hiring them, they're just paying them not to go to work at the model competition.
I think we had a case like that a few years ago where companies, Google or Apple, were doing that, and that was found to be highly illegal. But it really depends on the country, and it really depends on what the process is in court. But again, this to showcase of how desperate these companies are to not lose their talent and not make sure to have other companies steal their talent.
I mean, it's a very, very valid point. Maybe then we're actually going to the money-making territory now. I would say level 4 is where the application and the platforms are coming in. This is AI SaaS. And there's different ways of looking at this. So it's basically the way that you have a particular, so if there's a service product and you're now agentizing it basically. So you have certain features that in the past you didn't need AI or it wasn't possible to be even doing it in the first place, and now you can. Also, again, a fairly competitive market, I would say. Maybe also not the easiest way to make money, but where MCP A2A and all these particular, I would say, new protocols are coming in is maybe on level 5, and that I would refer to as AI enhanced services. It's really these fields of industries that haven't been, and I thought about the word here, SaaSified, or that nobody in the first place before built an actual SaaS product, and now with these protocols or AI agents, you can now be doing that. Maybe a few of the ideas there that is everything around transcription, maybe everything around healthcare billing, or more into the legal work, analysts work, compliance work. In the last episode, we talked about compliance officers being agentized, and that really goes into this level 5. I think level 5 is really the domain in Switzerland, in Europe, where you, as a beginner, can be making money because it's just the least competitive space of all these 5 levels. I don't know, guys, if you agree or disagree, or you have a completely different view to be answering this question.
I agree. I would just add an extra level, because as a business, there's a level 6. Using these products, you're making money using these products as well. Using these tools to... Yeah.
And again, it's supposed to be for companies, and you can start your whole company and have it like a super lean hierarchy, because you can have each of the employees be super enabled by these agents. But at level 5, at building these kind of agents for the companies, it's not competitive market, as you say, at the moment, but I think it quickly will become competitive. I think the demand's there. People are starting to realize how much they can do with agents. People are starting to want agents. And the Swiss market specifically is kind of a niche thing because it's also very restricted and regulated. And so to build these agents to be compliant with the Swiss businesses is a whole new thing. But it's something that people can get started on very quickly and fairly easily because there is money to be made.
I think it's a perfectly valid point. I think to be making money on level 5, I think it's just a necessity to also be understanding the lower levels. So you're basically building on top of chips, on top of data centers, and leveraging large language models, and you're trying to package them into, let's call it, agentized services. That's why we just brought it up a little bit, that are these 5 levels, maybe 6 levels have been pointed out, and that's basically the opportunities. And guys, I quickly want to be segueing maybe into the actual notion of what are possible, maybe business ideas. So maybe just for the sake of having some sort of overview, we can maybe discuss maybe, I would say 7, maybe 9 brief business ideas of how you could be leveraging MCP, how you can be leveraging A2A, and then derive actual business value from there. But maybe before we do that, what is your elevator pitch for MCP this week? This might be changing, but what's your current elevator pitch?
Have tools completely independent from agents. So you don't have to have a specific AI team building your entire AI agent stack. Each of the different teams of your company can have their own tools. So your one agent can use all the tools in your company. Basically, a way to distribute the workload across your company and have it all, let's say, converted to AI as quickly as possible and have it all enabled by AI as quickly as possible. So enable this like connection between agents and tools as fairly standard and structured, so it all works without having to have multiple meetings discussing on how to do things, because the standard is there and it works and it's being used across the world in different companies.
Benny, have any completely different opinion, or do you want to disagree as usual?
No, I think
Or
it's
you-
the same. It's adding collaboration for the agents, adding memories, orchestration, text, and everything. It's just a way to go forward. There's also a slight analogy regarding MCP, and we're going to touch the point of A2A in a bit again. Like A2A is Slack for bots. MCP is the project manager helping the bots to hit their KPIs. I don't know if it makes fully sense, but for me it does.
But no, I think it's a good summary. But you mentioned A2A. So what are like the differences and similarities? I think even when it first dropped a few days ago, A2A by Google, I was also a bit confused. Is it now the same as MCP, or is it actually one level more? And you made a really good example. But just for the audience, can you maybe explain again what the difference really is and why do we need it?
Okay, A2A is basically focusing on enabling communication between the agents itself, allowing them to share information, coordinating actions, and asking each other to be able to aggregate stuff and to finalize a task or integrate with some other tools or other agents. And MCP, again, is just the function or the tool that we're going to use to get that integration per se.
So in a very simple analogy, like MCP is giving laptops to your employees so they can do stuff, so they can access your network and actually work. And A2A is putting all your employees in a single room just so they can talk to each other and then can hopefully collaborate. They could be starting like some drama, but hopefully AI is a bit above that.
What was that now? Claude or ChatGPT?
That was
Yes, I
Gemini
use
L2.
Gemini.
Again, Gemini is the best model out there, so if possible at all, I'm going to use Gemini.
I was joking in the beginning. Sorry, in the beginning I was like, yay for Google and Gemini. And I recall for you, João, you were like more on Claude's side, because at that time Claude was way better. I was like, still, Google is there. He's there in the race, and the models are like getting better and better. And I'm really happy that you become a fan of Gemini now.
See, I have no loyalty whatsoever to these companies. So far, again, we're open for sponsors, but we're keeping track of all these models, and there's new models coming out, and we can talk about it in a minute. But as they come out, I'll just look at the metrics, use them, and if there's a new model out there that's better, I'll stick to that one. And right now, that's Gemini 2.5.
Maybe just to zoom in maybe briefly. So there is these two protocols. They have different purposes and they're somewhat interlinked with each other. But of course, I'm right with the assumption that it doesn't matter what model you're actually using, Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT, correct? This is like completely two different worlds. Not that you have to use A2A only with the Google models. Like that doesn't make any sense.
But that's the beautiful part of this, is like MCP was proposed by Anthropic, the guys behind the Claude lineup of models, and it's not model specific. So you can use any models, and if there's next week, there's a new model coming out from Google or OpenAI or whatever company wants to do it, then you can easily switch because it's a standard, and it'll be as useful, if not more, across all kinds of models. That's I think the biggest advantage of using a standard is that you don't have to have this vendor lock-in that sometimes binds down companies and costs them a lot of money because they can't switch technology stacks. And so by using MCP, you can have whatever model you want, and your tools will still be compatible with that new model. And by A2A, if there's new models coming out, you can still use them because, again, it's also standardized.
I think for me, that's the biggest elevator pitch, or like the actual added value for A2A is probably that, correct me if I'm wrong here on the engineering side, that the agents, they do not share data with each other. So it's like you have a separate agent from another one. So basically you might have two different companies, each having an agent that they can communicate with each other, but maybe in the past there was some sort of overlap on the data side. But in this way, with A2A, you have different states and you have different data silos, basically. So there's no exchange of data. Is that a correct assumption, or it's not fully engineering lingo here?
They can talk to each other. They choose whatever information they want to share. So you can have your own agent based on OpenAI's GPT model, and he's running your systems, he's had access to your inventory, and he wants to order something online from your supplier. your agent can talk to another agent using A2A, and that agent is running, let's say, Gemini. And that Gemini agent has access to different tools and has access to your supplier's inventory too, and can process your order and do things for you. But they don't have to share databases. You don't have access to your supplier's database or your supplier's software. But they do talk to each other, and they choose to share what the order is in this specific case. So you get fine-grained control of what's shared in the agents, so you don't have a massive data leak from your side.
I
So
mean,
it's basically a need-to-know basis in these scenarios. It's just the output of the functions that each agent can have. Normally, it would be this output that the agents would be sharing with each other in this organization.
all right, maybe if let's shift gear a little bit into maybe some different directions. So now, so far, we talked about different levels of AI. We talked about what, again, MCP and A2A really enable. But let's maybe zoom into some, let's say, business cases that are now possible and maybe pre-A2A and pre-MCP wasn't or weren't possible in the first place. Benny,
I do have, yeah. Sorry, you already prepared some of the use cases. I did some research and I found like a paper that went through Quora and Reddit to gather the most use cases, and then they separated into 6 different categories and gathered more than 100 different use cases. The ones that are more used are for personal and professional support, and then you have like 33 cases out of 100, content creation and editing, learning and education, technical assistance troubleshooting, creative and recreation, and the last one is research, analysis, and decision making. Just like the first 2 cases, for instance, for personal and professional support was therapy/companionship, organizing my life, for content creation, generating ideas, creativity. I just wanted to share before we go into deeper, but this has been more or less the usage from people on this with these AI tools.
Yeah, definitely send them over.
I can
Ben.
share this with you afterwards.
You can maybe put it into the show notes for sure. I mean, for me, it's usually, again, as always, if there's a new model or if there's a new protocol, right now, it's usually the first idea I have is like, okay, how is that translating into real business value for businesses, for startup entrepreneurs, or maybe for professionals that are just getting started building with AI. One particular notion I just had in mind as well was, again, like I'm mostly interested in building corporate SaaS products. It's just where I believe it's just a little bit easier sometimes to be building something a bit more elaborate with these softwares as opposed to B2C software. But something I just noted, I think, was mostly on the, let's say, the internal notion of ESG, for example. So it's like ESG is where you have to basically report certain different elements of your company, enterprise, social, and it's not enterprise, just the actual, I forgot what the E now is. So social and responsibility, but
I think it's environment.
Environment probably, social, and what's the G? I should probably look that up.
I think I knew that once too, because I had to do that, but it's been
Yeah,
a while
it's probably
since
it's probably the perfect example that I have never worked into the domain of ESG, but it's certainly a domain I think you can use AI agents in a great way, because it, like all these particular, let's say, letters E, S, and G, they need to soak in different contexts and different data. So you might have an agentic system that helps you on ESG performance automation or measurement, and with MCP now you're getting access to like all this data basically. So we're locked in as an environment, social, and
governance,
ESG. I learned something on the fly. That's always good. So that's probably one of the business cases I would come up with. ESG, performance automation. Many different companies are aiming to be going into this field, and that's something you can be leveraging MCP because it has multiple different data sources. They are maybe on the sales platform as well. You have maybe multiple lead systems, and you can also be maybe leveraging MCP from this notion. Do you guys have maybe some 1 or 2 business ideas now that we have MCP and A2A that we could mention here, or should I continue with my large list here?
I've worked personally on a ESG compliance agent once. I think it was back when we still were on ChatGPT 3.5. So it was a couple of years ago. But I did that for a company. So they were doing these reports every so often. And the reports were pretty much the same every time, but they had to do it every few months. And so instead of spending human hours answering those reports, they build an agent that has access to the real-time information of the company and have those answers performed automatically with the real data, so it's still compliant, and save people a whole lot of time and hopefully a whole lot of money. I think that project went into production last year. And so it is a real use case, and companies are actually betting on it a whole lot. I think another one that could be useful is you also, as a company, sometimes you have products out there that have technical people supporting them. And onboarding those people, you spend a whole lot of money training them for your specific products. So you have to have manuals and instructions on how to fix and repair every single thing, and have to enable those people to be useful repair people for your products. And so a way would be have an agent that helps those people when you get on site. They look at the code that the product presents. Let's see, you're fixing air conditioning systems. Your repair people can get to the scene, get the code on the system, and the agent can look the manuals by itself, and it can tell you exactly on how you can fix it. It can look up previous and similar flaws that have happened historically. So if error 2.5 is happening a whole lot more in the past few months, then I'll have access to that and can tell you how to fix it and how other repair people have been fixing it. This is something that can save you time and can get you to on the field with more people in a cheaper way, because each repair people spend less time and less money, hopefully, on repairing each equipment, and you can provide support for your products.
I also believe, you can technically dock all the G Suite to it, like Google Maps, Calendar, and so on and so forth. So I think maybe I put this also on the screen. Something I tried on N8N was basically just getting an agent to be looking up certain restaurants in a particular place. You can do that via MCP adapter to Google Maps. And then it just gives you, for example, all the restaurants, and then from there you can then derive an action via voice agent, for example. So that might also be an idea. So adopting all the, let's say, tools of Google onto these agents via just literally one click. Then some other ideas, they'll really be going more into the image capability of GPT. And feel free to interrupt me if that doesn't make any sense to be making it in an MCP way. But what if we ingested all the, let's say, brand guidelines of a company and ensuring and maybe some other, let's say, notions of marketing material, and we are just ingesting that automatically into a branding agent, for example. So branding / marketing visualization agent for autonomous creation of let's say, templates or of, let's say, just virtual assets that you need to build as a company. Does that make sense? Or is it just an over, let's say, leverage of MCP in the first place? My idea was just, instead of continuously loading the latest brand guidelines and the brand memorandums manually, you can now just automate that all the time. So if your design team is updating something, it will be automatically ingested into these agents, and then you can create basically on the fly all these virtual assets that you need for marketing. Is that a valid use case, or is it OP if we use MCP?
Yeah,
I think it's a valid way and a very quick way to piss off your artists, maybe. Because as far as I've been talking to some of them, they're really not happy with the image capabilities of these models. Not that they're not good, they're amazing. It's because they're directly competing with the artists and
but in this way, it's
creators.
like the internal design department, right? So your internal design department has these brand guidelines, and they might have some UX guidelines and so on and so forth. But there has always been this like discrepancy between this unit and maybe the marketing unit, no? So you can have like an automated ingestion of these like assets into the agent, or in this case, ChatGPT 4.0, that's just been enhanced with your actual guidelines. I know what you're going for is probably like the actual artist itself, but in this case, you just design people. Maybe you also piss them off. That's true.
Right here I see like two tools that the agent could have. One where it would grab the guidelines, the latest, and it would grab the guidelines for the case that you're developing, because you can have different guidelines for different scenarios. So it would one that would consume this guideline, and the other one would just grab the image and then do the comparison.
What about like
correction or whatever?
Product prototype generator. Like I tried that with ChatGPT 4.0 to generate, let's say in our wishful design, let's say, I don't know, some wireframes, like Figma basically, but powered by ChatGPT 4.0. So if we would build, let's say, the adapter to our, let's say, past, let's say, product specs, wireframes, screens from, let's say, V1, V2, V3, and we're about to launch the 4th version of a product, can we not just be building also, like, let's say, product prototype generator or product prototype agent that's helping us generate maybe new wireframes, but based again on these guidelines. I'm just, again, sometimes I'm getting a bit frustrated with the too general answers by ChatGPT, and I just thought this would make sense also to be using for automated ingestion, or that the agent has access to the resources in the first place. Or again, that's not a use case you would say makes sense.
Debate in my mind right now because of this scenario, because from one hand, I agree, because it has all the guidelines, but then we would kind of lose creativity on those aspects. But at the same time, I'm like, no, I don't know if you guys way back ago, like there was this game that I don't recall. It's like a square with some pieces. Go. Do you know? Go?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I've
basically,
never played it, but I know the game.
There was like training, and they put a machine to do that game. And after a
AlphaGo.
while, it started to put the pieces on the third line or something. And people were shocked because that's not how players used to play. But that created a whole new strategy. And after that, players started to use that strategy that was created or found by the AI. And here on this aspect, I can see this happening the same way. Like, we might be afraid of this, but this just might open our horizons for new ways to see things, new ways to prepare things. It's not replacing us. It's just boosting us the hell out of us.
And it's forcing us to adapt. So
Yeah.
DeepMind's AlphaGo, I think it was the AI that got really worldwide good at Go. It made people be better. They had to compete somehow, and like it came up with new strategies. People had to find even newer strategies to defend themselves in the Go game, hopefully not in real life. And so in arts, you can now start to do prototyping way faster. And so instead of having 5 or 6 rounds with your artist department or your marketing department saying, hey, please adjust this or please adjust that, or maybe try this but in green, you can do that with AI and be way, way faster. And then when you have a final idea on how you want things to look, then you can pass it out to them and they can do the final work to make sure it's at the quality level that you expect. Right? But now, as a business person with no design abilities whatsoever, you can prototype and iterate through all these designs and see what works and how it looks. Because it's very hard to imagine, visualize like what a marketing campaign could look like from a PDF alone, right? You'd want to see some images, some ads, some billboards, and now you can do that. You can ask the GPT, hey, put this image on a billboard and see how it looks on the billboard, or put it on the side of the building, and you can have an idea on how these things look. And they'd be so out of scope and so much harder to do manually. I think it's a brand new game, a brand new frontier that we are breaking through in arts. It's just the speed that we iterate through different versions.
I think it's a really good it's a really good notion in terms of iteration speed. It augments most of the humans to be just doing more with the given resources. Maybe the last business idea is maybe a bit, let's say, coming from one of the students I've had in one of the classes, and this person, he was writing an analysis around supply chain optimization in international setting, and I also thought that might be maybe a good idea to be, again, having an agent. Usually in supply chains, we have fragmented data sources. Like you have like some sort of data from one of the logistics partner, maybe freight here, freight there, maybe a ship, maybe a plane, but you never really have great clarity of what's going in the first place. There's a lot of notions in the tracking, I think, business, but that's really not what I'm referring to here. It's just like an agent that has some sort of overview of, let's say, disruption handling maybe, and just is ingested by multiple of these data sources via MCP, and then does some sort of disruption handling. Does that make sense? Maybe I'm not the best elevator pitching and supply chains here, but
it does.
Would that make sense technically?
I'm going to talk a bit, and then I'm going to pass to João as well.
Go ahead.
For me, in this perspective, the main problem, they have old software, really old versions, so it's hard to integrate with them. But then you can have an API to integrate with them with the MCP protocol, which is standardized. And this also is a good business idea, to develop tools for these old software, old versions, legacy versions.
If you have this, like, it would work, correct? Like you have legacy systems and you can just literally adopt it via MCP. So that's really the notion.
The tricky part is creating sometimes the tools for that. I think that can be something that can take some time depending on the legacy system. But then if this with MCP already have some tools standardized for these legacy systems, it's just plug in and play. João, do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Do you have another perspective?
Like a 50-year-old or like a 6-year-old project manager that has like works on these docks right next to the sea, and he's been using the same software for the last 20 years. And he sure as hell doesn't want to change the software because he's been using the same software for the last 20 years and it works. Like he knows all the buttons and it looks awful because it was made 20 years ago. However, with agents, you don't have to change the software and you don't have to install any new thing. You could pretty much use, for example, Cloud's ability to use a computer. I think that they call it computer use, which is a very straightforward naming scheme. And you could have Cloud, for example, interact with the system and go through the many tabs that the software could have to see all the dashboards. And you could have an agent that the only purpose of that agent is to periodically go through the software and take screenshots of all the dashboards and all the information inside that software. And then that information is now stored somewhere else, somewhere more modern, and you can have information available via MCP. Now, a different agent can do that disruption handling because now other agents and other softwares can look into real-time data and see that the docks have not been working well, that ships are getting late, or that one ship is maybe missing because people lose track of things sometimes. You can connect really old software with these really new approaches and not have to change a whole lot. And I think that's a good thing because it's hard to change old software, especially legacy systems. Like banks using these like amazing big systems that have been built in Pascal for the last 30 to 40 years. Now they can start to integrate with newer systems and not have to change their legacy software just yet. They should anyway, but not just yet.
Definitely recommended, yeah. But it's a good point. I recently had a discussion with, I wouldn't say that the name of the company here, but it's about exactly this problem. Like, how do we dock the agents to our, I mean, in the word of this particular company, fairly old software? And this was literally, I don't know, 2-3 months ago. And I was coming up with like an agent adapter idea, something we've talked multiple times offline. But now again with MCP, it just becomes again one step easier to be docking these agents to, once again, legacy systems. I think that's why it's really truly unique. Maybe to wrap up this segment quickly, MCP, you can literally dock anything from local files, for example, to search capabilities, to databases, legacy systems, data streaming. You can even be docking WhatsApp. You can be docking Google Maps. You can literally be docking any possible thing. Not that it wasn't necessarily possible before, but now it's just a lot more easy to be done, for example, in N8N via a simple workflow. Again, I will put that on the screen here. It's literally 2 or 3 buttons, and you have an MCP server basically, and you dock multiple, let's say, tools to that particular server. You then model it as one agent. One agent gets equipped by these tools, and then you might be communicating from this one agent to 15, 20, or 50 other agents via A2A. So that's really how this new chain works. Hopefully as a high-level summary. And maybe before we wrap up, we have some new models to cover as well. And I probably give you the red carpet here to be introducing you which one you like the most. Just to drop them already, ChatGPT dropped a new one. They also dropped memory capabilities. And Gemini, I think, is your most favorite one. Or which one do you want to tackle first?
I can just give some stats. It was GPT 4.1 was released. It has 21% improvement on coding tests compared to 4.0. It's 10 times cheaper and it has a bigger context window, 1 million tokens. Is it better than Gemini? In my opinion, no. It's not only on my opinion, but on the testing is also not as good. The thing regarding 4.1 is that it's not a reasoning model. Or 4.1 is just available through API. So the latency to time to first token is way lower than Gemini 2.5.
So it's a faster model, but not necessarily smarter or better than Gemini. Go ahead.
Just one thing on Gemini, and I think this was talked before. Google is integrating everything on their product, and it's awesome. But at the same time, be aware you don't want to be locked into one vendor or one model. I love Gemini, but you should be able to switch, and that's why the approaches of MCP and A2A is great. It requires a bit more setup, but when you're done, you're not locked into any vendor. If you go to the easiness that Google is presenting right now with integrating Gemini on everything, it's awesome for me as a consumer. But for us business, maybe not the best option. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, totally. Regarding OpenAI's new models, personally and deeply hate the way that they're naming things because it's becoming very hard to keep track of the models. And if I wanted to present you a table of like what's the best models could not go. I probably do a better job if I hid the names of the models, because it is generally confusing. It had 3.5, 4, 4.0, 4.5, that all tracks, right? Like the numbers going up means newer model, better model. And now after 4.5, we launch 4.1. Which is better than 4.5, cheaper, better, faster, across the board better. I think they're even scraping 4.5, so they're going backwards. And that's just like the, let's say, simple models. We call them LLMs, the large language models without the reasoning capabilities. And if we go to the reasoning lineup of OpenAI with the O1, O2, O3, I think already have
O4 as
the
well.
O4.
Mini?
Sometimes
Nano?
O1, yeah. Like ladder has 3 or 4 different variations. Sometimes O1 is beating O3, and like O4 is worse than O2. It's a very, very hard thing to keep track of. And so it does not help the consumer to understand what models they have available.
What's your best guess why they do this? Like, it can't be complete coincidence that they're naming these things that random. There must be a bigger thing at play.
To me, it seems like the buying time for GPT-5. Like, they've been hyping and they've been teasing GPT-5 release and capabilities. We know it's coming. Sam Altman said they release it before the end of the year. And so there's only a few months until they actually have to release it. But until that happens, they have to fill the market and fill the hype space that is AI with something, so people don't forget about them. And so they keep releasing these models, and sometimes the models are generally better. And sometimes they're smaller models, which means they're faster and they're cheaper to run, and they're not as good, but sometimes you don't need a PhD to do something an intern could do. And so you can use cheaper, faster models, and sometimes you need bigger, more expensive ones. That makes sense. However, how hard can it be to have a proper naming scheme? And it's not just OpenAI, other companies are doing it too, but OpenAI has like the spotlight right now, and it is frustrating to see them fumble naming and versioning so hard and so frequently.
I think I'm taking the other side of the argument here. I do believe they're doing this on purpose to generate steam in the market. I mean, what does make more people, let's say, a bit frustrated than they're going backwards with different namings? Now we're again talking about it. Every single newspaper, I think, is talking about it. So it's probably better to be naming the model 4.1 to create some steam, some cloud, and some clicks maybe, and some, again, eyeballs, as opposed to create, I don't know, calling it 4.6, 4.7, or 4. I don't know. I just believe a multi-billion-dollar business in the world is not doing this not on purpose, basically. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Benny, what do you think?
Maybe they put ChatGPT to name them, and it wasn't the first one. The first one decided the name scheme, ChatGPT 1. It decided the name scheme, and they're just following through. It doesn't make sense.
Or maybe the 4.1 was intended to be released first for some reason. I don't know. It's a different research team, I think, in OpenAI. I don't have any access to that, but I just believe it's also these notions.
Yeah, different families, I would say.
Exactly. Which one are you, like, what's your current best model to be choosing for, let's say, the most OG agent you want to build? Like, you want to be equipping your AI agent with the best possible model. Is there even an answer to that, or it always depends on the use case?
We personally I've been using GPT 2.5 Pro, which is
Gemini.
Gemini. What did I call it? GPT. Okay. Yeah. It's OpenAI getting into us by their
They already got to you.
versioning scheme. Yeah. I'm secretly sponsored by OpenAI. We've been using Gemini 2.5 Pro, and it's a really good model. There's a equivalent of an IQ test that you can run on these models, and it's scoring super, super high. It's an equivalent of having a very, very smart person, knowledgeable across many areas, helping you out daily. The thing is, to build agents, and it depends on the use case, it also depends on availability and pricing. Google has been consistently one of the cheaper options out there in terms of tokens, in terms of models, but that could change within weeks. Within a few days, OpenAI could come up with, I don't know, let's call it 3.8, just to make it as confusing as possible, and release a new model that's somehow cheaper. And so 2.5 Pro from Google right now is one of the best models out there, and it's top of the charts across multiple datasets, multiple benchmarks. It is a very good model, a very capable one. But that doesn't itself make an agent. An agent also has to have high availability. What if you want to have the agent running 2,000 times in parallel? like interacting with your customers, for example, as a support agent. Then you need to have it available and very available in your region. So you keep your data, sensitive data within the country. And you'd have to have like GPUs and data centers ready to host that kind of load. And sometimes you don't. Claude is also really, really good at coding. So maybe if you want help coding, Claude is a really good option. It's been a very solid option for the past, I'd say, months. So yeah, I think it really depends.
It depends
Bene,
on the use case.
do you have one?
Yeah, I just want it was funny because I felt you wanted to say years, but it has been moving so fast that it's just months.
Yeah. I mean, this thing is changing so fast, and it's good that's changing because it's changing for the better. But it is hard to keep track of all the models, and I really do think OpenAI is winging it in terms of naming. Because if they're doing it on purpose, then
They do it on purpose, sure.
They do, I'm sure.
I'm fully convinced they do this on purpose. I don't know. Bene, what's your most favorite model? The most capable?
From my end, I
Gemini?
think it's not only the model itself, but also the availability throughout the world. They have several data centers on several sites. Maybe they don't have the latest models on all centers, but they are the ones that are more up to date. And I think they're trying to conquer a market from Azure and Gemini with the Pro option and then with the Flash option too, because the Flash, I don't know if you guys use, the Flash is so freaking fast. The Flash models, they're super fast and they have all the capabilities of tool calling and everything that you need to assemble an agent. Google has it. And again, availability, pricing, it's the one that has more data centers spread out. You don't need to necessarily go to GCP, sorry, but you can just use the inferencing from Google. I think it's right now one of the most available and faster ones that you have.
Yeah, that's a good point, that your inference, your models, don't have to match your current stack. So you could be building everything in Microsoft, and you could still use Google's models. You could have everything on-prem with your own servers running in some back room that no one has the key for, and you could still use whatever inference you want out of Google, out of AWS. So they should be, and they can be, independent things.
I think it's a perfect maybe note to wrap up. Something that I also noted down was this story that dropped, just to quickly paint a picture. There was this CEO that was basically convicted of frauding investor. I think it was like $40 million that was raised because of, it's called Nate AI. And they, instead of having agents like we have in 2025, this was some years ago, they had multiple human labor workers executing certain tasks. I think it was an e-commerce or close to e-commerce platform basically. And they're having, I don't know how many, but hundreds of probably humans executing on tasks which the CEO of this particular company sold as AI. And you, Ben, I think, just to round up this episode, made a really good comment that this is now possible.
Yeah.
Without humans, but it took some years. And this person, again, the CEO of Nate AI, had to be probably charged, maybe goes to prison. I don't know what's happening on this front. But I think you made a really good point that now this is possible.
Yeah. This is the point at the beginning I said. They promised deep learning. What they deliver was deep learning. That was a really nice quote from GPT.
Thanks for giving credit to AI where you get the stuff from.
Come on, I'm not going to take credit. I will give credit where it belongs. But with this, to sum up, right now we're builders. There's probably founders listening to us. There's business listening to us. And I wouldn't say that we're on a crossroad, because the crossroad it's already taking place, because this is the year. So you can either try to fake it, like did you say the name? Nate AI?
Nate AI, yes.
Yeah. Or you can leverage the tools of the real power of multi-agents with MCP, with A2A, to actually solve your business problems, to improve the performance of people. The tech is here. You just need to choose to go to the next level and to take this as the year.
Good. Sounds good. That's a good notion to be ending. Anything else to add from your side? Maybe Joao? Or you're happy to go to East?
It may be hard and difficult to build at first, but it's getting a whole lot easier and cheaper too. If you're gonna choose a year, if you're gonna choose a moment to do it now, build your agents. The best time was yesterday. The second best time is today. So just start building your damn agents and using them in your business. Otherwise, you'll be left in a disadvantage. And a competitive world that we have out there, with tariffs and geopolitical warfare going on around, it's good to have the power of AI on your side, because all the help is useful right now.
Cool. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's round that one up. And for the audience, we do these episodes every single week. I'm also planning to upload some more tutorials on N8N, MCP A2A, and much, much more. So feel free to also drop a comment, like, and subscribe to the show. The next one should be out after the Easter break next Friday. Guys, take care. Happy Easter, and don't do any dangerous things. We talk next week. Take care.
Danger is my middle name, man. Take care.